She looked into his eyes and lied without flinching one last time. It was a skill she had perfected over the past 2 years, a mask of serene innocence that hid a labyrinth of secrets. He was asking her where she'd been. Her car had broken down, she said, a flat tire on a deserted back road, her phone dead. A classic, almost cliché excuse, but delivered with such earnest frustration that he couldn't help but believe her. He wrapped his arms around her, kissing her forehead, telling her how worried he'd been. She nestled into his embrace, her heart a cold, heavy stone in her chest. This was James, the man who had given her everything, a beautiful home, unwavering support, and a love so pure it almost felt like a fairy tale. And she was shattering it, piece by piece, with every lie, every stolen moment with someone else. The lie about the flat tire was just the latest in a long, tangled web. It had started small. A late night at work that was actually a drink with Michael. A girls' weekend. That was a trip to a cozy cabin in the mountains with him. Michael was everything James wasn't. Spontaneous, dangerous, a thrill. He made her feel alive, desired in a way she hadn't felt in years. With James, life was comfortable, predictable, safe. With Michael, it was a whirlwind, an exhilarating dance on the edge of a cliff. She told herself she could have both, that she could keep her two worlds separate. She convinced herself that what James didn't know wouldn't hurt him. It was a dangerous game, and she was the only one who knew the rules. But the guilt was a persistent shadow creeping into the quiet moments, whispering poison in her ear as she lay next to her sleeping husband. James wasn't naive, but he was trusting. He loved her with a blind devotion that made her deception feel even more monstrous. But small things had started to prickle at the edges of his consciousness. The scent of a cologne that wasn't his clinging to her scarf. The way she guarded her phone like it was a state secret. The vague answers and sudden, unexplained expenses. He'd tried to ask, gently at first. She'd always have a plausible explanation, turning his questions back on him, making him feel foolish and suspicious for even asking. Was he becoming one of those jealous husbands? He loved her so much, the thought of losing her was unbearable. So he pushed his doubts down, choosing to believe the beautiful lie she presented to him every day. He wanted to believe in the woman he married, not the stranger she seemed to be becoming. The beginning of the end came on their anniversary. James had planned a surprise. He'd booked a table at the fancy restaurant where he had proposed, bought a stunning diamond necklace, and left work early to fill their home with candles and roses. He sent her a simple text. "Hurry home, I have a surprise for you." He waited, his heart thumping with excitement. An hour passed, then 2. He called her phone. It went straight to voicemail. Panic began to set in. He called her office, but they said she'd left hours ago. He called her friends, who had no idea where she was. As the candles burned down and the roses started to wilt, a cold dread replaced his excitement. It was the same dread he'd been trying to ignore for months, but this time it was too loud to silence. Just after midnight, she finally walked through the door. Her hair was messy, her lipstick was smudged, and she reeked of cheap wine and a man's cologne. The practiced excuses, the careful lies, they all died on her lips when she saw his face. He wasn't angry. He wasn't yelling. He just looked broken. On the table, amidst the melted wax and drooping flowers, lay the open box with the diamond necklace, glittering under the dim light, and next to it, a small stack of photographs. Her blood ran cold. James had hired a private investigator. The photos were undeniable proof of her betrayal. Pictures of her and Michael, laughing at a cafe, kissing in a park, entering a hotel. Each photo was a dagger twisting in his heart and in hers. The game was over. There was no shouting match, no dramatic confrontation. Just a heavy, suffocating silence. He finally spoke, his voice hoarse with unshed tears. "Why?" It was the only question that mattered. She opened her mouth to speak, to offer another lie, another justification. But the words wouldn't come. What could she say? That she was bored? That she wanted excitement? That his perfect love wasn't enough? Every excuse sounded hollow and selfish, even to her own ears. In that moment, looking at the man whose world she had just destroyed, she saw the full extent of her selfishness. The thrill of the affair was gone, replaced by a profound and soul-crushing shame. She had gambled with the most precious thing she had, and she had lost everything. He asked her to leave. He didn't want to hear her apologies or explanations. He just wanted her gone. As she packed a bag, her hands trembling, she moved through the house they had built together like a ghost. Every object held a memory. The coffee mug he'd bought her on their first trip. The painting they'd argued over for a week before laughing and buying it anyway. The worn-out armchair where they'd cuddle and watch movies. These weren't just things. They were the building blocks of their life, a life she had single-handedly demolished. She had traded this beautiful real life for a fleeting, counterfeit excitement. The weight of her choices was crushing. She had gained a temporary thrill but lost her home, her partner, and her own self-respect. Standing at the doorway, bag in hand, she turned to look at him one last time. He was standing by the window, his back to her, looking out into the dark night. He didn't turn around. She wanted to say something, anything, to fix the unfixable. But there were no words. "I'm sorry," felt like a pathetic insult. She quietly closed the door behind her, the soft click echoing the finality of her actions. As she stepped out into the cold night air, alone, she was hit with the stark reality of her situation. She had lied to him for the last time, but now she had to face the most difficult truth of all, the one she had been hiding from herself. She had broken the heart of the best man she had ever known, and in the process, she had broken herself. The loneliness that awaited her was a prison of her own making. The weeks that followed were a blur of empty apartments and lonelier nights. She tried to continue her affair with Michael, but the thrill was gone. Without the danger and secrecy, their connection felt shallow, almost meaningless. She saw him for what he was, an escape, not a future. He couldn't fill the void that James had left. The comfortable silence, the inside jokes, the feeling of being truly known and loved for who you are. Those were things Michael could never give her. Her grand adventure had led her to a dead end, a desolate place where she had nothing but her regrets for company. She realized that the security and love she'd had with James wasn't a cage, as she had convinced herself. It had been her anchor, and now she was adrift in a storm she had created herself. One day, months later, she saw James across the street. He was with someone else. They were laughing, and he looked happy, genuinely happy. A sharp, painful pang of jealousy and regret shot through her, but it was followed by something unexpected, a small sense of peace. He deserved to be happy. He deserved someone who would cherish the love he gave so freely. Seeing him move on was the final, painful confirmation that her chapter in his life was truly over. She had looked into his eyes and lied one last time, believing she was in control. But the truth had a way of revealing itself, and in the end, the only person she had truly fooled was herself. The story of their love had ended, not with a bang, but with the quiet closing of a door and the devastating silent realization of what she had thrown away. Thank you so much for watching. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. We'll see you in the next one.